Okay, so this is the walkthrough for the conflict narrative assignment. Now, this is not the actual assignment. This is sort of the precursor to the actual assignment, but I want you to have it so that you are having the first half of the actual assignment sort of started. All right, so for the conflict narrative assignment, you are going to be writing about a conflict you had with another person. It has to be with another person. It cannot be man versus nature or man against himself. This has to be man against man. All right, so it has to be with another person. It can be a big conflict. It can be a small conflict, be about a decision. All right, it has to be true. All right, don't make this up. This isn't fiction. It should be something about your life. Surely by this point you've had some sort of a conflict with somebody else. And a conflict can just be that you wanted X, the other person wanted Y, and and those two things were mutually exclusive. Right? So you are telling that story from your perspective. Right? You're going to have narrative plots of plot, setting, and characterization. Right? The plot is what actually happens. The setting is where that something happens. And the characterization is the people involved in the place where it happened doing the something. All right, whatever it is. Because a story doesn't take place in a vacuum. It takes place in a certain time and place. At a certain age, the values are different depending on your story. All right, so those things matter. All right, you are telling a story with a conflict leading to a climax and resolution. So you've watched movies, you've read books, you know that a story starts off one way, and then as the protagonist is trying to accomplish whatever it is he's trying to accomplish, then obstacles are put in the way, and it's about how the protagonist manages to overcome obstacles. Eventually it comes to a place where there's a crisis, and then there's a climax and a resolution. So the climax is the crisis, and how does the person resolve it, and the resolution is what happens afterwards. Should be in chronological order. This story, don't give me postmodern writing. All right, just first this happened, then this happened, then this happened. A straight chronology, please. You are trying to encourage us to entertain, but you want us to have some sort of feelings, right? So you want to get your reader involved in your story, in your life. The setting is important. Now, maybe your setting's really mundane, right? And sometimes that is, right? But you want to describe it because you don't want to have your story happening just in the middle of just in a blank room. Right, because your story didn't happen in a blank room. So you want to include setting elements. And Stephen King talks about this in his book. And so you want to take and use some of those strategies as well. All right, we should have a sense of the ambiance of the space. And all that work you've done in the descriptive essay, well, that's being used here. All right, so you can use those same kind of details to bring in the setting of your story. We should have a sense of the people involved, right? So their actions, their thoughts, their dialogue. So your thoughts, dialogue is what people say, okay? And you do have to include dialogue in this paper. The assignment meets the following general education goals. This is what you can do, right? Requirements of the assignment should take place in less than 1 day, right? Don't tell a story that takes a long, long time, right? The story should be relatively within a short time frame. And the reason I want you to do that is so that you really focus on that moment and not on something enormous, right? Like students sometimes think that breadth versus depth is important, and I really want depth, right? I want you to focus, right? Chronological order, clear transitions, should be descriptive of setting and character. You're using those concrete verbs, specific nouns, all those things again, right? And then here's the grading rubric, right? And again, don't focus too much on the conflict narrative rubric here because this isn't the actual assignment. This is not what you're actually going to do. You are going to be actually telling this same story from the other person's perspective, right? So my suggestion for this, for your assignment, is to tell a story that is not hugely personally traumatic to you. Don't do that. I did that once. I didn't tell my students that they were going to have to tell the story from the other person's perspective. And I had a student who wrote about being molested, and when it came to the part where she had to write about it from the other person's perspective, she dropped the class because who wouldn't, right? And she could have redone the first part, but she didn't, and, I don't want to lose you. So don't choose a story that's super traumatic, right? Also, choose a story with a little bit of moral ambiguity, right? So I gave you an example in this file, right? And in this story, there's some moral ambiguity, right? There's ways to be right and wrong, right? And that makes the story more interesting, and you want your story to be interesting, right? So if you choose something with a little bit more ambiguity, then it raises the tension and it makes it easier for you to write from the other person's perspective. If you are absolutely unequivocally correct, then, what is there to say, right? But you look at it different ways, then you've got more to work with, right? And likewise, try to avoid making the other person that you had the conflict with into just an outright villain. All right, first of all, outright villains are boring. They're just bad to be bad, blah, right? And really, most villains aren't. Villains have a good backstory. There are reasons for the way that they are. And it might be more interesting if you choose a story that is got a moral questionable thing, both from your point of view and maybe from the other person's point of view. And you're not just the good guy and they're not just the bad guy. Choose something like that. For this point, you should have some sort of story like that in your life. So you have this example to read through. I will let you read through it. You can look at the rubric. The rubric for the final will be largely the same, but just so you can sort of look at it. And that's about it. What questions you have, let me know, and I will talk to you later.